Fintech Chatter Podcast, brought to you by Tier 1 People, the leaders in executive search for fintech ventures.
Hello and welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in today's show, I'm joined by a reformed banker who began his fintech journey in 2011. Andrew Ward is the original founder of Self-Wealth. He brought concepts like social trading and flat fee brokerage to the Aussie market, taking Self-Wealth to number 3 in market position in amongst the big 4 banks. He's now about to embark on, or has just embarked on his latest venture, Liquidise, and he's here to tell me all about it. Andrew, welcome to your Fintech Chatter debut.
Thank you, Dexter. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. It's not very often that we get somebody on the show who's on their second rodeo. So, and I guess we can kind of talk about some of the lessons that you've learned and share those to our network a little later. But I'm really excited to share with our listeners Liquidise, because I think for many people that are listening to this show and that are fans of the show, the solution that you're bringing to market is one that will actually benefit their personal wealth in a way that they just haven't been able to access previously. Would you like to tell us a little bit about Liquidise?
Well, Liquidise really was born out of my experience at Self-Wealth. I really wanted to give liquidity to shareholders of unlisted companies, especially ESOP holders, employee share plans, the ability to own something in the company. So salary could be equal to equity. And if you are really involved in the company, I thought that was the big thing that we needed to encourage. So Liquidise is all about creating liquidity for shareholders of unlisted companies.
When we talked about this, I obviously was excited because, invested in earlier stage businesses as well. And it's always struck me that, the secondary market has been pretty inaccessible. And, we've seen developments over the last decade, like crowdfunding, which I think is fantastic. But then it's where's the opportunity come for people to get out if they wanted to sell those shares? What was it that, kind of as you were doing the research, what was kind of some of the feedback that you were getting from people as to whether this would be a viable option here in the Aussie market?
Well, I think that there are so many complications if you're going to list. You've got continuous disclosure. There are all these compliance costs. So if you can create liquidity in a private market, that was the main thing I was trying to solve for.
So Andrew, it sounds like this is two-sided, perhaps even a three-sided kind of marketplace. Is that right?
Well, Dexter, yes. For my sins, I don't keep things simple. So, yes, it's a three-sided marketplace. So we not only do we have companies coming onto our share registry, we have this guaranteed cash pool in the middle. And then we have the offshoot, the distribution, the buyers on the other side. So we have to make sure that we've got all three horses running down the race at the same time.
As I mentioned before, there hasn't been a solution like this in the Aussie market previously. I can think of a few reasons perhaps why not many of them beneficial to business owners or employees or kind of, early stage shareholders. What kind of, I guess, friction have you kind of encountered so far as you've gone out to market? Has there been anybody who's kind of pushed back and said, hey, we don't want this solution as it's not going to be good for us? Or
good question.
Is it a one you want to answer? Or
when I first started trying to raise money for this company back in 2022, I spoke to a lot of VCs. And they said to me, Andrew, every single one of our portfolio companies wants liquidity.
Yeah.
But we really don't want to be the facilitator of the success of your business.
Yeah.
because how controversial do we want to get, Dexter?
Yeah. No. I think it's a really, really important point, and it kind of aligns with a lot of the messaging that I've been trying to push through the podcast over the last 2 years. Is that we've kind of had, particularly here in Australia, almost like the only option that you have as a startup business is you got to get VC funding. And I think what we're seeing is that notion is really being challenged, particularly over the last 18 months, is
what's on
access
the tin?
to capital. Yeah.
Dexter, what's on the tin? That they say we're founder friendly.
Yeah.
But are they really founder friendly, VCs? That's the problem, I think.
From a VC perspective, how can you be engaged by investors to get maximum returns and then say you're founder friendly, right? It's like, that's to me is
it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, an oxymoron, right? So, I think it's more, perhaps just honest conversations and kind of honest positioning is required, rather than trying to kind of take this approach of being friends to everybody, because actually doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm with you. So we are in a position where we've gone for the low-hanging fruit. So we're going for unlisted public companies. So we deal through constitutions, rather than shareholder agreements, because the shareholder agreements that VC funds have with their founders and the companies, I think are quite onerous.
Yeah.
So we want to help the companies. Or we want to give the power back to the companies, I suppose. Yeah.
We've seen also, I guess, over this last 2 years as well, the rise of alternative methods of funding, whether that's kind of being able to get, kind of cash flow funding based on, what you're doing revenue-wise, or, what you've got subscription-wise, where we've seen businesses like Tractor Ventures and others that have kind of come to the fore there, where when you consider that Australia has I think at the last count I read 2.7 million small to medium-sized businesses, there's only a very small percentage of those that are backed by VC.
True. And we have a big backer in BGL, or Ron Lesh, who sits on our board, and he was one of the big supporters of me at Self-Wealth.
Right.
And their one product there, the self-managed super fund product, was very successful for us. But probably his biggest product is the CAS 360 product. There are 900,000 businesses that sit on CAS 360. And there are 2,500 of them that are publicly unlisted.
Right.
So we will go directly to them. They're not VC backed.
Yeah.
There are no onerous conditions by VC backers trying to hold their founders to ransom.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too negative about VC funds, but
I think it's not to be negative, right? I think what I'm trying to do, and I think with this podcast is like, let's just be open and honest, right, and cut through the bullshit, because we're not in a position in the economy, right, runway or mental health or any of those other things where it's just not the environment for us to be pretending like it's the Lego movie and everything is awesome, right? It's and I think it's to be fair to VC as well, right? Like, this is an industry that's it's still in its infancy in Australia, right? There's still a lot of learning to have.
Well, they've gone through their challenges in the last 3 or 4 years, and is it now a viable industry? It was a sexy place to be.
Yeah.
Is it now a sexy place to be?
It's just like any other, I think. It's, like fintech itself, right? It's like, we've gone through that massive rise and now we're in a lull, and it's, for me, it's great because it's a kind of, it's a cleansing process, right? Where the people who are in it now are in it, I believe, for the right reasons. Whereas I'm not sure I could have said that in 2021, where, kind of everybody wanted to be in fintech, and why, because I think it's sitting around drinking kombucha, dreaming up how to solve world hunger with a blockchain. And it's just not. Which we'll get onto that a little bit later, actually, because it's quite relevant to this discussion. But going back to the kind of Liquidise problem, I know that there's going to be lots of people in my network, founders, etc., that are going to be interested in it. I think it's as you pointed out, a much bigger opportunity than just catering to the tech startup market. Would I be correct in assuming that?
Yeah, very, very much so, Dexter. I think where my head fell off was where I consulted to a couple of crypto companies back in 2022, and I discovered the world of DEXs, or decentralized exchanges, Uniswap, really.
Yeah.
And people were appropriately incentivized for contributing to a liquidity pool.
Yeah.
To make a market work. TradFi has never seen that.
Yeah.
And I went, surely I can pick that up and bring it into the TradFi world.
Yeah.
And that's what Liquidise is all about. It creates a guaranteed cash pool that, as an automated market maker, so we have a pricing mechanism that's built in, similar to the DeFi world, that makes it work. And it's the connection between buyers and sellers. So these smart kids with propeller heads coming out of Stanford created this stuff.
Yeah.
And let's bring it into TradFi.
Yeah. Obviously, it's been a tumultuous, I was going to say a couple of years, but 15 years really in that space. What is as somebody who's come from traditional banking, who's also then, been a founder, but gone through the rigor of being an ASX-listed CEO, what is it that, kind of you're cautious about when it comes to crypto and using that type of technology when you're then applying it into a highly regulated environment?
I'll correct you on saying crypto.
Right, sorry.
Tokenization
is
blockchain.
Blockchain, right.
Digital asset stuff. Crypto is meme coins, and that's not us. That being said, though, it is very much a Ponzi world.
Yeah.
But blockchain is a different type of way of looking at tech and tokenization. It enables Liquidise to do instant trading.
Yeah.
So cash into your wallet straight away. There's an instant way of auditing us to make sure that we're not doing the wrong thing. So, I think it's very important that we have auditable stuff, KYC, AML, CTF in this world, and blockchain enables all of that to happen.
You're also sitting on the board at Red Belly Network as well. I know we're here to talk about Liquidise, but I think it's important that we kind of touch on that as well, because it kind of ties into what you've just said. What's the connection between Red Belly and Liquidise?
Well, Liquidise is a way of providing clean liquidity on a layer one network. So if you think about providing liquidity for a shareholder who's a company that sits on the Liquidise registry, imagine that you've got $10,000 worth of liquidity or asset on the registry. The word is composability, but you can then maybe lend against that globally. and get a lending asset that can provide you with a way to pay your school fees, etc. So the Red Belly Layer 1 network, which I think has been spawned out of the CSIRO and the University of Sydney, and shout out to Vincent Grimelli, the genius behind it, has solved the tripartite problem in the blockchain world.
Right.
Consensus mechanism, without getting too technical, Dexter. And here we have Liquidise sitting on top of it with a liquidity solution that can create clean liquidity, because Red Belly is also AML KYC. So there are so many different dApps and solutions that can come to Red Belly. So I think me being part of Red Belly is very consistent with Liquidise being on it. Yeah.
One of the things that I think most excited about the possibility of is tokenization of real world assets. One of the things I'm most fearful of is tokenization of real world assets. And the reason why I say that is I'd ask you to put your kind of banking hat on and look back to the kind of 80s, 90s, where we had all of these kind of like exotic derivatives kind of start to emerge, which then I guess ultimately led to the GFC and what was a debacle. And then we seen a mini GFC only 12 months back, 18 months back in the digital asset world, and what happened then. Unfortunately, what I seen were exactly the same behaviors and kind of approaches that had kind of led to, the GFC. And I wondered from your side, kind of seeing, I see Liquidise as almost like a test run of what it's certainly here in Australia, probably the first significant real world tokenization of assets, creating a marketplace that I can think of and that I'm aware of. And I'm kind of wondering whether we've seen the ASX project kind of imminently shelved, and I'm wondering kind of what kind of pressures you feel around making sure that this is right and that this becomes a very kind of...
so are we shouldering any responsibility, I suppose?
Well, it's groundbreaking, right? So it's kind of, it's...
But it's actually quite simple, because we always went from the start, and my background is compliance. As you said earlier, I'm CEO of a ASX listed company. Gosh.
Yeah.
You can lose your house. You can lose
you're only 25, right?
So compliance is subconsciously, I suppose, the thing which drives my behaviour. So looking at the Corps Act and everything that ASIC looks at. So we regard a tokenisation of an asset as a security.
Right.
And so ASIC went, okay, you're calling it a share.
Yeah.
Yes. So we got license.
Yeah.
So it's not more complicated than that.
I've always kind of found it really difficult to understand this, the argument in the US around Ethereum and so.
Well, the whole thing with Ripple and all these cases that are going on there, I think it's fascinating. I find the argument really academic.
Yeah. It's, I always get frustrated by it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so we've created this token. We trade a token that goes up and down in value.
Yeah.
And we reconcile back to the share registry at the actual security level. So we're not saying it's anything but.
What kind of reception did you get from regulators? You mentioned there, when you applied for the license. And
I think we got quite lucky. We got a commercial guy at ASIC who looked at our submission the first time. So different response when I was doing the thing at FinClear.
Yeah.
So obviously FinClear is still going down the route that I sent them on,
Yeah.
which is now called FCX, getting a secondary markets license. And one of the things when I said my head fell off, because we're not matching a buyer and a seller at Liquidise, we have this guaranteed cash pool in the middle. It's all tech done, but we didn't need the markets license.
Right.
And it's just a very simple solution.
So that's the thing that kind of I'm still struggling to get my head around is without the buyer and the seller, how does it actually work? Like who's got the risk?
The risk is, I suppose, held in the investors in the cash pool. So we have family offices that invest in the cash pool. So, so a typical conversation I would have with a family office, Dexter, would be, so you've got $100 million invested in private equity. Maybe it's in Blackbird, SquarePeg.
Yeah.
Maybe you've made a few investments directly. When are you going to get a return from that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
We know it's high risk. If we gave you 5 million of that, are you telling me that I can earn like a 20, 30% return? So I can start making a high yield investment in my PE, VC return money.
Yeah.
And the risk I take is that we don't sell that to the other side, to our distribution partners, which we've got plenty of. So I end up owning some of that stock. But that's like my other 95 million. So where do I sign up? So it's a very easy conversation for funders of the cash pool in the middle. Remember, it's all tech based. So it's although you've got sellers of companies and you've got buyers on the other side, it all looks and feels like it's an exchange.
Yeah. So this is, what I would say is kind of one of the first truly digital age fintech business ventures that certainly I've seen, right? And that's not to be dismissive of what we've seen before this, but I think certainly what's being built is a digital version of an analog business. This seems very much truly, this is a digital business for a digital age, which is, look, at the end of the day, right? You're always going to have buyers and sellers. We're always going to have to trade and exchange value. I think the thing that has been very, very clear to me so far is that we're still using a lot of the same mechanisms around that exchange of value. This sounds like it's slightly different.
I think the main thing, Dexter, if I had to distill it down to one thing, why we're a bit different, is a lot of people say they have a liquidity venue.
Yeah.
Even the NSX or the SSX, or even small little exchanges around the world, they have this chicken and egg problem. No companies want to list on them because no brokers are connected to them, and no one wants to.
Yeah.
It's like saying you've got a swimming pool with no water in it.
Yeah.
So this whole realisation I had 2 years ago about creating a liquidity pool, I think it's the Holy Grail. I think it solved the problem.
Yeah. One of the other things that gets me and has had me excited about blockchain, tokenization, digital assets, stems back all the way to 2016, 2017. And as we start to see the kind of emergence of neobanks, there's something that really kind of resonated to me about where this technology takes us. And that is that when I looked at the kind of the ethos of what was happening in the neobank space, a lot of it was really something that wasn't new, something that was circling back to, kind of the beginning or the origins of banking. And if you think, where we are here in Sydney, there would have been a bank would have been central to this whole city emerging and everything that we've got around us. And that bank being the fulcrum of a whole community ecosystem. And one of the things that really strikes me is with blockchain is the ability for us to create these ecosystems, not geographic, but based around perhaps common interests, values, certain markets. Look, I think Liquidise is, probably again, kind of one of the first examples that I've seen of how do we take this technology, create an ecosystem where we can actually trade and barter and kind of exchange value. And I don't want to say middleman. I think you're always going to have this kind of intermediary. You need to have that intermediary. But what you're doing is you're actually kind of got the freedom to create your own markets without kind of having all of these other parties involved and challenges around kind of their clip of the ticket. Do you see kind of Liquidise as being share? Do you share that view or?
Look, very much so. I think, Dexter, the beauty of blockchain and decentralized systems is that you have an asset that you own in your own right.
Yeah.
That you can use to do other things. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, composability around lending, etc. And with zero knowledge proofs, without getting too technical into, if you don't have to share who you are or your passport number or whatever it is, but it's known based on a verifiable credential, whether it's wholesale investor certificate or people around the world on the blockchain can go, bang, okay.
Yeah.
We know who that person is without having to actually access their personal information, and bang, they've got that asset, they've got this, they do that, so therefore we're prepared to offer them that. That's the beauty of blockchain and decentralized systems.
One of the other things that kind of really strikes me about the Australian market is how heavily the investment is geared towards property. I'm not sure if this is a good example to use or not, but right now in the US, we've got a big story hitting where Donald Trump needs to find $465 million and he can't get anybody to give him a bond, and he doesn't have the cash to pay the bond, and he claims that all of his wealth is tied up in property and he can't release that. And so he's kind of put in a position where he's going to have to potentially have a fire sale. I'm not kind of suggesting that we build a solution for Donald Trump, but I think the kind of example being that we've got a heavy market here where a lot of our superannuation is tied up in property and commercial property as well. A lot of Australian kind of domestic wealth is tied up in a property and in equity in that. And in order to realize that value, we often have to get further into debt and pay interest rates on that to kind of recognize some of the value that we've already created. Would the Liquidise platform kind of look to extend into other asset classes as you grow?
Yeah, very much so. I think the model is all about creating liquidity for illiquid asset classes. So we've got a lot of interest from property, unit trusts, even VC funds.
Yeah.
We go back to earlier in this podcast, I talked about the VC funds are not, that interested in what we're up to, are less funding us, but they actually are trying to provide liquidity for their own LPs.
Yeah.
So we are very much involved in sorting that out. Then there's carbon credits. Also, we are just about to launch in the UAE.
Right.
And the sovereign wealth funds there will fund the cash pool to, $500 million and we'll create a hybrid exchange in that market too. So
I think there's a strong possibility of that region becoming a major financial hub in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah, they're looking for, I think, solid, reputable businesses to back.
Yeah.
and when you're backed by ASIC and you go over there, they go, okay, that's a bit of a green tick.
Yeah. I want to kind of move the discussion on to a little bit more around really your experience as a founder. As I mentioned earlier, you came from Big Four banks, CBA, very, very different environment to a startup, let alone you being the founder. What was that experience like, kind of taking you back? I'm taking you back to 2011, but it's a pretty safe place, or by comparison, being in a Big Four bank to then being sat at a desk going, day one, where do I even start?
Gosh. There was one moment that really, I suppose, got me over the line and made this all happen. So self-wealth was an idea in my head for a good year or so prior to me leaving the CBA. So I thought I wanted to create a self-directed investment solution for someone like me. So self-directed investors, where do they go? Well, they don't have many choices. They typically go to their accountant, and then, but who looks after accountants? Well, this one company called BGL kept on popping up. So I cold called this guy called Ron Lesher, who was the founder of BGL, who looked after all these different, accountancy firms. I went with my CBA private hat on, so I got in the door, and I said, sorry, Ron, I'm here with my personal hat on. He said, okay, son, you've got 15 minutes and that's it.
Yeah.
So I did my best self-wealth pitch.
Right.
And he said, okay, Andrew, 3 things have to happen. 1, I want to be on your board because you've got no idea what you're talking about and you need help. 2, I want exclusivity. So you can't deal with Class, which was their main competitor at the time. And 3, you need to resign within 2 weeks. I said, what? I've got 3 kids and a mortgage and it's Christmas time.
You know what it reminds me of?
I can't do that.
It's kind of, it's almost like that scene in Wall Street where he keeps rocking up and he's got the cigars and he's like, all right, you got 5 minutes, give me something. It's like...
it was so shocking. And I went home to my wife. I resigned within 2 weeks.
Yeah. How did your wife take that decision? And then I guess, what did it do for the relationship? Especially as that I'm thinking of the moment.
You don't want to go there.
I'm thinking of the moment when you ring the bell. And
she rang the bell with me.
She rang the bell with you. Awesome.
Yeah. And I can provide you that footage. I made sure she rang the bell with me.
Yeah. How did you get like a little kind of wink or a hey? Yeah. All right, you were right.
Oh no, so much you were right. It's thank you for the journey you've been on with me.
Yeah. It's it is, and I know we're joking about it, but it is something that I think kind of often, we kind of tend to not skirt over, but don't talk much on this show, is that the impact that doing something like this has on your partner, your wife, your kids, your family.
Well, self-wealth was a swear word. It was a 4-letter word at home. Because Louise, my wife, worked in the business until we floated.
Right.
And then when we floated, everyone in the business said, why is she there? What's she doing? So she quit, which is really hard.
Yeah.
Because she was my eyes and ears. She ran everything. She was the operations. She was the marketing.
Yeah.
And we're now going through the same process. Does she come in into Liquidise? But yeah, it's all consuming when both parents are in the business together. Yeah.
Yeah. What was that moment like when you did ring the bell? Can you remember how you felt at the time?
Yeah, I'll take myself back. So it was Lou and I. We we did it together. It wasn't anything that was over the top. It was almost like I don't know, Dexter, how to say it. It was something that had to happen at the time. We didn't regard it as an exit. We didn't regard it as a fantastic thing that happened. It was a great thing for self-wealth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, right? But I had this conversation on the last podcast. It's these big moments that, everybody externally thinks, oh yeah, that's it, right? Like that's the Hollywood moment.
No.
And yet when I speak to leaders, right, they don't even celebrate these things because it's like, what am I celebrating? I've earned the right to another 6 months. It's like, we're kind of, we just got like a little bit more oxygen.
Yeah.
And,
and the share price dropped.
Yeah, externally, right? You're like, these are big moments. Everybody wants to make a big deal of it. And on the inside, you're going, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got all this other shit I've got to deal with now.
Well, we listed at 20 cents.
Now I've got to look at all the costs have increased because we're listed, and I've got to have a chief compliance officer, and I've got to have this, and I've got to have that. It's kind of it's not the panacea that it's been kind of made out to be. I don't think.
Correct. And I'll never forget Lou and I at the airport flying home that night from Sydney back to Melbourne. And the share price had dropped from 20 cents to 16 cents. And one of the, I suppose, key drivers of Liquidise is private companies being in control of their own destiny.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether your kind of personal experience had, that experience that you've just talked about had anything to do with kind of the drive for, getting on the horse again and doing it all over again with Liquidise.
Yeah. True. So one of the reasons why we probably floated a little too early for Liquidise back in 2017. One of our key private equity investors who sat on the board got into some issues with their other companies, and they needed to liquidise some of their holdings. So they almost forced us to list.
I want to talk about some of the lessons that you've kind of had over this last 13 years or so. What would you say, kind of when you look back, over particularly the self-wealth journey, the key learnings that you kind of take that you go, okay, next time around, doing that differently?
I'm not good at that.
Right.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
It's not saying I'm not a good people person, but I'm not good at managing people. One of the main reasons I stepped down from self-wealth was I had people walking into my office with HR issues. I don't want to shy away from that, but just not my strength.
Yeah.
I wanted to be out there. I wanted to do the whiteboard. I wanted to solve the problems of the world. I wanted to get back to the creating a new North Star, etc. So,
it's interesting you say that because I've been getting a lot of candidates reaching out, and when I've asked them, "Hey, where do you see yourself making an impact?" they see themselves as doing the things. And I'm talking about people that are kind of looking at, say, a chief of staff or chief strategy, and they're talking about doing the things that, to my mind, it's the founders that should be doing it. Right. And it's the stuff that you've talked about that's kind of shouldn't really be a founder's strength. And the reason why is that I think because of the purely kind of, I don't want to use the word ego, but I think you have to have some kind of ego to do this in the first place, right? It's like to back yourself and to believe, it's almost like delusional, right? You've got no evidence, like physical evidence to go, hey, this is real. You've got to, I don't fake it till you make it is not really the right term. It's believe it until you make it, right? And to have that vision and to have that belief that you're going to back yourself when oftentimes most other people are going to try and knock you down and say you're stupid or it's not going to work, is like that kind of, to me, that personality profile, I've very rarely seen somebody who has that and then can be this, servant style leader who's, empathetic the whole time and puts their arms around people. It's, you kind of, it's a bit more, I think, people tend to be more emotionally driven, kind of creative. And we know creatives, just looking at movie stars and pop stars, right? They're not the most balanced. They're not HR people, right? They're not working aged care. They're on the stage performing, kind of in the spotlight, taking the heat, taking the pressure, and it's the stakes are high, right? It's like you screw up, your kind of career's over.
I think you're spot on, and when you say ego, it almost feels like it's selfish as well.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to do something for yourself, but it's the only way that you know how to operate.
Yeah.
And that is what it is for me.
Yeah.
So I have my North Star. So I know what I'm trying to solve. Yeah. And I will do anything to solve for that. So therefore, that's the reason why, my businesses have been successful in the past. So you have this line that you always, all these things happen on the other side that are negative or people, you always you can go back to that line.
I remember seeing a Netflix documentary, and it was about Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre. And Jimmy Iovine is probably one of the most single-minded, relentless people that has ever been on earth, I think, when you see the way he goes about kind of getting things done. But he said, look, the reason why most people fail is you got to have blinkers on, right? If you look at a racehorse, right, it's got blinkers on. He said, the problem with most people is they're looking left, looking right, and they're not focused on what's ahead. And I think that's kind of very much what a founder, as you've explained, needs to have. And I think there's also real power in recognizing who you are.
I'm also a songwriter.
Yeah,
you can argue whether I'm a good one or not. You can find me on Spotify if you want to, but it's very similar to me for creating a business.
Yeah.
So if you want to get into my DNA and what drives me, I want to create something out of nothing that other people probably can't do, and then hopefully the world gets a benefit from it. So I think writing a song and creating a business is the same thing for me.
Yeah. There's a line in the movie Gladiator, which is something that really kind of is, you talk about North Stars, and the line is, what we do in life echoes in eternity.
Yeah.
And, when I look at things like a song, a podcast, anything, a book, a painting, anything that somebody has created and put out there, that's out there for eternity, right? And that has ripples and, kind of impacts on people that, it's like songs, right? Like songs I can remember from 20, 30 years ago. And sometimes I'll just reach out to the artist and say, hey, you know what, this song has like made some real,
it affected me. And
it affected me. It's like I had friendships and, all of these things that are kind of, that song resembles, kind of that to me. And, I think for any artist, any creator, and I think you're absolutely spot on, building a business is a creative process. And,
there's no playbook.
There's not, right? And I think it's kind of this whole debate around, work from home, remote. And I think the reality is, right, like people have to focus on, and businesses have to focus on, what are the best ways in which we can get our people to be creative and to collaborate and to solve problems, and how do we make sure that everybody's kind of energized. And I think that to me is the question to be asking, not as, hey, do we need 2 days in the office, 3 days? Do we have a 4-day work week? Some days you might have a 1-day work week, some weeks it might be a 1-day work week, but, and then the next is like you're cramming 10 days of work into 3 days, because it's
my best work is done in the shower. So, yeah,
we'll not go there. This is this Apple will censor this one. We talked a bit about, I guess, some of the experiences that you've had. Coming out to Liquidise, we're here in a really nice part of the world, Barangaroo, inspiring place to work. We've got the harbour right next to us. You've got a really compact team. It's kind of that, real, the kind of genesis, or the point where I think anybody who is creative, who does want to build, this is like this is the point where it's like, imagine being part of that. What are you trying to kind of bring in culturally to be able to deliver on the vision of Liquidise, and what are the types of people that you think are going to be the right fit?
Yeah, I think, Dexter, I want people, first of all, to have ownership in the business they're working in. And obviously, if you're going to really work hard, and I am a bit of a taskmaster when it comes to, I said I'm not good at managing people, but really I'm asking people to follow me over a cliff.
Yeah.
So therefore, you want people to own that journey. So, which is the whole reason why Liquidise exists in the first place, is to be able to provide, liquidity for equity. Salary equals liquidity. So I am all for, you walk around this office, they will all tell you that they are investing in what they think is the future for themselves and for their family. And there's an international story here as well. So what I can provide is a vision and a leadership.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's a decent thing.
Look, I think, culture, to me, there's several things that I think kind of really get
I don't really understand it.
Well, it's misrepresented, right? Because what is it, right? So people, it's abused a lot, right? Because I think when you talk about culture, people will rattle off stuff that they wish it was or they aspire it to be. Culture, at the end of the day, is driven by one key factor, and that is that whatever you as the CEO, the behavior that you walk past, the behavior that you tolerate. We're coming to a wrap up, Andrew. If people want to find out about, first of all, the Liquidise platform, so we got lots of founders listen to this show. Where can they find out about how to potentially put their business on the platform?
We obviously approach me directly, andrew.ward at liquidise.com. You can come directly to the liquidise.com website. We're more than happy to help. People overseas, do they listen to this podcast?
Over 40 countries were listened to. So
great. We're coming to you soon.
Cool. We also get amazing talent listening to this show. If anybody's fascinated by the Liquidise journey and wants to find out about potential careers, where's the best place for them to head?
They can contact me directly, andrew.ward at liquidise.com.
Awesome. Andrew, it's been fantastic to catch up with you. Genuinely excited about the Liquidise platform. I think, long overdue for this market. And I think it, genuine, not only problem to be solved, but I think, solving it in a way in which, we're kind of moving into the future and not holding into the past.
Thank you very much for your time and your interest in us, Dexter. Can't wait to keep on working with you.
Awesome. As always, folks, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. If you're new to the show, make sure you give us a follow. And if you're feeling even more generous, give us a review. It really helps promote the show to other fintech fans and helps provide a platform for great Aussie founders and Aussie businesses like Liquidise. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. It really does mean a lot. Until the next episode, keep well. Fintech Chatter is produced by Tier 1 people, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll find world-class leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures. And you can find us at tier1people.com.